Hello, welcome back to Manta Rays in the Sky. It's your hosts, Geo and Ashley.
Yeah. Hello.
Uh,
Or should
so,
I say, oh, sorry, I cut you off
oh no,
there.
it's fine. I'm interested in what you're about to say.
Oh, I was just going to give the greeting in Anishinaabe. I was gonna
Oh,
say,
actually, yeah, that's good. Yeah,
Ani, Bojo.
Anin
Um,
Bojo. Yeah.
yeah.
So today's just gonna be a shorter special episode. Just in recognition. So for today, for Canada Day, it's we thought it would be really good just to um like encourage reflection today and learning of uh, traditional cultures and keeping of the land. And we just wanted to do a little educational thing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of um issues have been coming to light recently. Obviously with like recent news. And uh the current discovery of unmarked graves. A lot of people are like calling to cancel Canada Day, and I guess we should still celebrate something, but maybe not the fact that Canada is the country that it is in the way that it is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I think,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's still important to recognize all the privileges that we have, all the gifts that we've been given, like a lot of the stuff that makes our lives so privileged. But it's also just really important to 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 learn and to reflect and to pay respect to those who have suffered so long for this privilege to be built, as well as those that continue to suffer, because a really important thing to recognize, um not just being like don't be ashamed of your privilege, but recognize that privilege can only exist with poverty. So when you take so when you're given more than you need, that's being taken away from somebody else. So it's important to use the unique positions we're in to try to educate each other, bring peace, bring love, and to just try to help and support and improve any suffering in our local communities.
Yeah, very true. So I guess we should start with like a land acknowledgement. Say what treaty lands
Yeah,
we are on.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So something, definitely a lot of people will use the word like Indigenous Canadian or Native Canadian just as like a blanket term, but it's important to realize like the diversity of the land. So there's three main recognized distinctive cultural groups. There's the First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit. And of the First Nations, like there's over 630 First Nations communities in Canada, which are represented in 53 unique languages with over 200 uh, dialects. So there's a lot of diversity in cultural belief and practices and history all throughout Canada. The region that I'm in right now is recognized by the Williams Treaties as Anishinaabe territory of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. How about you,
And
Sarah?
uh, I reside on unceded Algonquin territory, and I'm in Treaty 57 area, and it was established in 1847. So in the Algonquin territory that I live in, there is 1.2 million people who work and live here as well, on the unceded Algonquin territory.
Yeah. So what do you mean by that unceded territory? So what's a little bit of the history of and just acknowledgement for where you are?
Oh, yeah. So in Ontario, there is one federally recognized group of Algonquin people, or yeah, of Algonquin, and it's the Pikwakanagan. First Nations. And so unceded just means that they never surrendered their land. They never consented to it being used or settled on or falling into the ownership of Canada.
Okay.
And then it was like colonizers from I think at yeah, it would have been like British colonizers, although I think it might have the treaty might have been established through French colonizers as well as with along with the Algonquin people in Quebec, because that's so there are 10 recognized Algonquin First Nations, and only one of them is in Ontario, and that's the like I said the Pikwakanagan. There's the Kitiganzibi, the Barrier Lake. There's Kitchisakik, Lac Simon, Abitibiwine, Long Point, Timiskamik, um, Kibawek, Wolf Lake, and yeah, that's everything that was in Quebec. And so basically the Pikwanagan people in Ontario had to purchase their own reserve lands, um, because they were never given any compensation for their lands. So they they were never recognized as the holders of that land, obviously, and it is unceded. So they had to purchase their land back after not surrendering it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And that's just one of like the many things that's really important to reflect on and to learn about, especially like take advantage of like what day it is today. That's a federal holiday. Most people get the day off work to learn these types of things, because then from that type of education we can understand some more systemic discrimination that has led to disparities today. Like we're, you know, biologically, spiritually, we are all equal, but unfortunately, socially and economically, we're not all equal. We're subject to the conditions of our birth, and 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 there's a lot of people that from these types of discriminations, like having to being forced to repurchase their own land, has just started off on like an economic low ground, and it's hard to recover from that. People inherit the tragedies and the traumas of their family.
Yeah, and even when they did purchase it, they didn't officially own the land. It was only that they were given certificates of having like having that be the land that they reside on, and they were allowed to then pass down the certificates along their lineage, but they don't actually own the land from a legal standpoint. Um,
Yeah,
and yeah, and even more than that, most indigenous communities and reserve communities aren't like allowed to work on their infrastructure at all. They're not allowed to put funds towards their infrastructure. They're not allowed to put the manpower towards their infrastructure, namely like water
yeah,
infrastructure. And
yeah.
that's why it's such a huge crisis, right?
There's a really bad water crisis, and that's something that's really difficult, I think, for a lot of people to come to terms with, especially when you don't witness it firsthand, because Canada has the fourth largest reserves of fresh water in the world, and yet there are people in our country that, you know, don't have access to that. That's really difficult. What you're talking about with infrastructure, I know one of the foremen that I was working with a few years ago, she she did some conservation work up at a reserve near Thunder Bay, and I know she was saying that they're like, it was a pretty small community, like not a ton of people lived there, but the entire community had all of their electricity from a diesel generator. They didn't get access to the power grid until 2017. And I know she was saying like it was really interesting like being there and witnessing it because families were so excited that they had access to the power grid that they put up Christmas lights all across the entire community because that was the first time that they had enough electricity to actually do something like that. So in that
Yeah.
winter, they decorated the entire. Like she said, it was really beautiful. It was a really nice community event. But again, that's something that a lot of people don't witness, and so it's really important to reflect on that and to ask ourselves, like how can we help areas near us, close to home? How can we improve the lives of the people around us?
Yeah, I was reading one article and it was talking about how many reserves have water treatment plants, but because they are so critically underfunded, they are only supposed to filter water for like 20 people on a reserve that could have hundreds or thousands, or tens of thousands. So like
Yeah.
it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
exactly, and that's,
I also have some more stats about the water
yeah, yeah, of course.
cleanliness. So namely Trudeau, he promised when he came into power that 126 First Nations communities, which had no clean water, would have clean water reliably by March of 2021. And 32 communities still remain. And I think that's around 60 separate water like warnings, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Water security warnings, that's
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so 73% of communities are at high to medium risk of contamination. So even if right now they're in the clear, they're still very, very susceptible to water contamination. Um, and that's the case with a very significant amount of reserve
yeah,
communities.
no, like, that's so tragic that, because water is such a basic necessity for life, like, it's water is not a privilege, like, water is a necessity, and
It is.
and
It's a basic human right.
Exa exactly. So, like that's something that's important to it. Like that's a big thing for us to be able to use our privilege to, try to hold policymakers accountable. But also like if policymakers and government officials like aren't fixing these problems, then we need to come together as communities to fix these problems. We need to to help fund these um like clean to help fund access to clean water, and we need to help our fellow human beings because that's the thing, because it's hard when there's so many labels put on everybody, like these aren't just, indigenous people or Algonquin people or Pikawage people that are suffering. These are just people that are suffering. These are people that just want clean water. Like that's not, I saw a First Nations activist uh making a public statement saying, you know, asking for clean water isn't activism, but
Hmm.
denying people the access to clean water is terrorism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And
I
so again, that's just something that, you know, is important to take time today to look up, to research, to, and our ignorance around it, to that way we can like work together to try and like help some of these issues.
hmm And this is not the only crisis and um you
Oh,
know,
it's yeah, it's
this is
not
not
like
the only instance of them, like of indigenous peoples currently being deprived of their basic needs,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. And I know also like there is a really high disparity with access to education and with funding in education. I
Mm-hmm.
know, for example, according to Stats Canada, Aboriginal people aged uh 35 to 44 who have completed at least high school um is at uh 68%. And that's compared to non-indigenous people who are at 88.7%. That's a really
Yeah.
high disparity. That's and like from all the horrors of residential schools, like there is just a lot of distrust in public school systems, but also something that's really important to understand, because I know um, like some people don't really understand what exactly the tax breaks are on First Nations people, but because people will often realize that there are certain taxes that First Nations people don't pay, but a huge thing contributing to that is like our taxes go into public funding, and
Mm.
for example, like public schools in Ontario are funded by the provincial government, whereas schools on reserves are funded by the federal government, and they receive so much less funding. So there's just so much less government funding going to reserves than to public schools, and that contributes to really low qualities of education. There's a recent study found over 30% disparity in funding between reserve schools and uh, public schools, and
Yeah.
that's really difficult. Like people, education is really important, especially with increasing and disproportionate rates of poverty. Like education can help empower people, and that's
Absolutely.
and
And I think um a large factor that also has is like on the mental health of indigenous peoples, like namely in reserve communities. I know I was like looking at this overview that on StatsCan, and they said that like in indigenous people who live on reserves, like they are more likely to have problems with their mental health,
yeah.
and way more likely to commit suicide.
Yeah, no, I was in high school when the Atawapiskat suicide epidemic was going on. It was
Yeah.
horrible. It was tragic. Like, and and that's something again where like it's really important to recognize and um like recognize and be grateful for all of our privileges, but also recognize the suffering caused by people that lack a lot of these same privileges, and how we can like compassionately um like send aid and love to each other and try to move forward into the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I know the Anishinaabe people that have tended the that have traditionally tended the land that I'm on. I know they have a teaching that I wanted to share. It's the Nijwazi Mishomasag Kekinomadawin, which are the seven grandfather teachings, and that's just something that's just very important to the cultural philosophy of a lot of the Anishinaabe people, and the seven and yeah, so the seven grandfather teachings are honesty, truthfulness, respect, wisdom, bravery, humility, and love. They think that so in this cultural context, those are the most important qualities, the most important teachings of life that are handed down from the creator and that are given to us from the land. That's um, the Anishinaabe language is a dying language. There's so much less and less people speaking every year, and in a lot of ways, like culture is really tied to language. It's really important, because how we speak has a big impact on how we think as well, and
Yeah,
and
I
so
think honestly it because the language is still growing. Like we learned taking that the course, like and learning about Anishinaabe the words were still being created, because obviously when the language was first made, they weren't exposed to the global knowledge of like animals and plants, and so they named what was around them.
yeah,
um,
yes, yeah, exactly. So that's a really great revitalizing movement, where people, they're still trying to keep the language alive, like anything, like it adapts with times. People are trying to keep it alive. In not too long ago, the first standardization of the written Anishinaabe language was created by a council where they had like a standard of spelling and writing, and a lot of books came out. I know Professor Shirley Williams, who taught at Trent University, has personally done a lot to try and keep the Anishinaabe language alive and spread it through different communities. And yeah, so that was just something that I thought was important to share, because I know, because for example, the word for land, like eke, um that is also related to the word for teachings, which I said le kinomadawan. And 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 like the ki is there because it's that teachings come from the land, wisdom comes from the land, even though like all across the Americas prior to colonization, and even right now, like the the First Nations, the Métis and the Inuit, had very diverse, like within the First Nations as well, there's very diverse range of beliefs and practices and ways of life. But something that was the most common amongst the majority of First Nations was the reverence for the land, and trying to live in accordance and paying respect to the land. And that's something that we are really lacking right now. That these these teachings are important to reflect upon and to try to build back into our lives. I know
Absolutely.
the Yeah, yeah, and I know the
And
or sorry,
yeah,
what were you
I
saying?
think I was gonna mention like what's happening in BC right now around Fairy Creek. Like I think that's a very good example of what you were saying.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. Not paying
large
respect
lack
to.
of respect for ancient like trees that are thousands of years old, um, and are so important for our climate and for their sacred traditions and teachings.
Yeah, exactly. Like trees are so vital to the planet, and to us and to all life. And like that's just an example of us being disconnected from so, from our innate wisdom and the wisdom of the land by destroying this. Realize that none of us owns this land. We are all guests on this land. We're tending to it, and it is providing so much for us. And yeah, and exactly, like um wisdom, the Bakawin, like that's really important. Like that should be the basis for like a lot of our actions. uh Zagadwin is love, and love is so important. Like I know, Especially in a lot of like Western culture, we kind of like try to like idealize the computer model of, you know, like how we should be, that, you know, everything should act perfectly rational and perfectly logical. And, you know, a lot of people like think that like emotions cloud judgment, but the truth is love is such a powerful source of you know, thinking and action. And it's, you know, there's so much wisdom in love. Like it's important to embrace that, to love everyone around us, because like what I said before, it's not, you know, like what like westernized society, colonizers, First Nations, Métis, Inuit, it's all just people. Everywhere you go, it's just people. So respect each other, learn from all the cultures around us, um, and and grow, and just try to help those around you, and this world will be a better place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, just wanted to keep this one short and sweet. Like you and I definitely learned some stuff from doing the research today, that we wanted to
Yeah,
share some of the knowledge that we learned. Like in and you know, one of the biggest themes like that we just wanted to spread out to everyone today is just make sure to have a day of reflection, reflecting on the history of the land, and how that contributes to, you know, to like how all the sufferings from the past contribute to sufferings in the present. And like
obviously, there's a lot of people that are deeply personally affected by recent events, and I
yeah,
think that we I think that people that don't have understanding of why those are such current and very prominent issues. I think it's really important living in this country and seeing um, so many people doing their part and making as much of an effort to bring light to important issues. I think it's really
yeah,
important to do as much as possible. I think that even if you are only starting your journey of trying to be more knowledgeable and trying to gain that understanding, I think it is important to keep at it, even if you think you are far behind, even if you think you still have a lot to learn. That is only an opportunity. That doesn't have to be a limiting factor. Um,
exactly. Hate and, you know, the root of so much of the sufferings are perpetuated by ignorance, that that you know, like we can start to solve that through the power of educating ourselves, educating each other, um, and that is our path to motivating each other to help one another. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Is there any final thoughts you would like to say?
No, I think I said everything I wanted to.
Yeah. Okay. So, Chimigwech, everybody, for listening. Chimigwech to the land for providing so much for us, and Chimigwech to the traditional tenders of the land who watched over it, and um, are,
Continue.
yeah, and continue to watch over it. Uh, yeah. Much love and respect to everyone.